My backyard is my sanctuary, a meticulously crafted oasis of tranquility carved out from the relentless hustle of city life. Years of grinding, countless overtime hours, and strategic financial decisions had finally culminated in this. A home that reflected my hard work and dedication. The house itself was comfortable, functional, but the backyard? That was the masterpiece. I envisioned it long before I even seriously began house hunting, sketching designs on napkins, poring over landscaping magazines, and mentally budgeting every plant, every paver, every pebble. The centerpiece, of course, was the pool. A sparkling, azure expanse, shimmering under the sun, beckoning me to escape the daily pressures. A cascading waterfall feature added a soothing soundtrack to my relaxation, the gentle rush of water erasing the city's cacophony. Then there was the tiki, bare, a testament to my love of island vibes and a perfect spot for mixing up a refreshing cocktail after a long day. The surrounding landscaping was carefully curated, a blend of lush tropical plants and vibrant flowers, providing privacy and a sense of escaping to a faraway paradise. I poured my heart and soul into creating this space, and it became my refuge, my happy place, my escape. I'm a man of simple pleasures. I work hard, I pay my bills, I strive to be a good neighbor, and I relish the quiet moments of peace. But there's no denying that the splurge on the backyard was my indulgence, a tangible reward for years of relentless effort. I'd always believed in investing in myself, in creating an environment that nurtured my well-being and allowed me to recharge. So, I made the leap and transformed my backyard into the haven I'd always dreamed of. For months, I enjoyed the serenity of my backyard paradise without incident. I hosted small gatherings for friends, spent countless hours lounging by the pool with a good book, and often just sat quietly, appreciating the beauty and tranquility of my surroundings. I felt a deep sense of contentment, a profound satisfaction in knowing that I had created this space for myself, a personal testament to my achievements. I minded my business, respected my neighbors, and generally kept to myself. My life was simple, uneventful, and precisely how I liked it. I valued my privacy and my peace, and I made a conscious effort to avoid unnecessary drama or conflict. I was, in short, a model homeowner, contributing to the fabric of the neighborhood without ever seeking the spotlight. It was a quiet life, but it was my life, and I cherished it. The arrival of Karen, 2 doors down, disrupted the delicate equilibrium of my peaceful existence. It was as if a discordant note had been struck in the otherwise harmonious melody of the neighborhood. From the moment the moving trucks pulled up, a palpable shift in the atmosphere was evident. Her presence was immediately imposing. There was an air of self-importance that radiated from her, a subtle but unmistakable sense that she believed she was somehow superior to everyone else on the block. Her interactions with other neighbors were laced with a subtle condescension, a thinly veiled judgment that made everyone feel uneasy. She seemed to hold herself aloof, observing the comings and goings of the neighborhood with a critical eye, as if she were evaluating the worthiness of its inhabitants. I witnessed her making disparaging remarks about the landscaping choices of other homeowners, commenting on the unfashionable cars parked on the street, and generally projecting an air of dissatisfaction with everything around her. These encounters made me instinctively defensive, on alert. As a black man, I'm acutely aware of the subtle cues, the microaggressions that often accompany prejudice. I've learned to recognize the tone, the veiled insults, the condescending smiles that mask underlying biases. I recognize the familiar energy that Karen emitted, that patronizing tone, the unsettling prolonged stares, the way she seemed to clutch her purse tighter when I walked past. It was a classic Karen archetype, a caricature of privilege and entitlement, and I knew instinctively that her presence in the neighborhood was going to be problematic. I made a conscious decision to avoid her as much as possible. I figured if I minimized our interactions, I could perhaps sidestep any potential conflicts or unpleasant encounters. I timed my trips to the mailbox to avoid crossing paths with her. I took a different route when walking my dog, and I generally made myself as invisible as possible. My strategy seemed to be working, at least for a while. I managed to maintain a safe distance, avoiding any direct confrontation or unpleasant exchanges. I could feel her eyes on me sometimes, watching me from her window, but I refused to acknowledge her presence. My goal was simply to coexist peacefully, to minimize the disruption to my carefully cultivated tranquility. However, I knew in the back of my mind that this fragile truce could not last forever. The undercurrent of tension was palpable, and I sensed that a confrontation was inevitable, and it was only a matter of time before Karen's entitlement would bubble over and disrupt my peace. The summer heat arrived, amplifying the existing tensions and creating a pressure cooker scenario that was destined to explode. As the temperature soared, so did Karen's audacity. The passive-aggressive glances and subtle digs escalated into blatant acts of entitlement, culminating in an outrageous display of disregard for my property and my personal space. One Saturday, I decided to dedicate the afternoon to pure relaxation. I fired up the grill, intending to slow-cook some ribs while I enjoyed the sunshine and a cold beverage. I put on some music at a low volume, carefully selecting a playlist that complemented the chill atmosphere I was trying to create. I was finally unwinding, finally starting to feel the stress of the week melt away. That's when the pounding started. A relentless, insistent assault on my side gate shattered the peaceful ambiance. I sighed, a sense of foreboding washing over me. The sound was unmistakable, and I knew instinctively who was behind it. Reluctantly, I peeked over the fence, steeling myself for what I knew was coming. There she was, Karen, in all her sun-hatted, oversized sunglasses glory. And under her arm, a glaringly bright neon-pink flamingo pool float that screamed entitlement. Even through the fence, the expectation was palpable and radiated in waves. Without so much as a greeting, without even a hint of politeness, she launched into her demand. She announced, in a tone that brooked no argument, that she and her girls would be using my pool that afternoon. Her explanation was dripping with disdain. The public pools were full of people she didn't trust. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She was essentially commandeering my private property, transforming my sanctuary into her personal playground, with a thinly veiled excuse rooted in prejudice and classism. My initial reaction was disbelief. I couldn't fathom that someone would have the gall to make such a request, let alone demand it with such blatant disregard for my rights and my boundaries. But then, anger began to simmer beneath the surface. This wasn't just about a pool. It was about respect, about boundaries, about the audacity of someone to assume they were entitled to anything they wanted, regardless of the impact on others. Calmly, firmly, I told her no. I explained that this was my private property, not a public resort, and politely told her to leave. Her response was immediate and predictably infuriating. A strange, unsettling smirk twisted her lips, and she accused me of being the aggressive type. The implication was clear. A black man asserting his rights was inherently aggressive, while a white woman demanding access to his property was simply being assertive. I refused to engage in her twisted logic. I simply reiterated that my pool was not available for her use and that she needed to leave my property immediately. Then, I shut the gate, locking it firmly behind me, hoping to put an end to this bizarre and infuriating encounter. I went back to my grill, trying to salvage what was left of my afternoon, but the peace was shattered. 10 minutes couldn't have passed when the unthinkable occurred. The distinct sound of water splashing yanked me back to reality. It was a sound that resonated with everything I owned and wanted to protect. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, as a wave of disbelief washed over me. Had she actually done it? Had she truly dared to trespass onto my property after I explicitly told her no? I crept cautiously towards the side fence, peering through the slats, and my blood ran cold. There she was, Karen, fully submerged in my pool, floating serenely on her ridiculous neon flamingo, sipping from a thermos as if she were enjoying a leisurely afternoon at a 5-star resort. The audacity was mind-boggling. She had not only ignored my explicit refusal, but had actively violated my property, demonstrating a complete and utter disregard for my rights and my personal boundaries. Before the shock could fully subside, adding insult to injury, 2 more women appeared at the fence, attempting to climb over to join Karen's impromptu pool party. I had had enough. I stormed out of my house, my anger finally erupting to the surface. Every ounce of patience I had accumulated was now gone. I strode towards the poolside, my voice ringing with authority. I ordered them to get out of my pool immediately. My tone was firm, uncompromising, and I made it clear that I would not tolerate their continued presence on my property. Karen, however, simply tittered at me, waving her hand dismissively. She accused me of overreacting and lectured me about being so territorial. Territorial? This was my property, not a shared community space. She was the one trespassing, the one violating my privacy, not me. I reiterated my demand, informing them that I would be calling the police if they did not leave immediately. That's when Karen pulled out the ultimate weapon in her arsenal, the threat of calling the police on me. She suddenly feigned distress, claiming that I was threatening them, that I was acting erratic, and that she and her friends felt unsafe. The hypocrisy was staggering. She was the one trespassing, the one creating the disturbance, yet she was attempting to cast me as the aggressor, using the power of her privilege to weaponize the police against me. The situation was escalating rapidly, spiraling into a dangerous and unpredictable territory. I knew that I had to remain calm, to control my emotions, and to avoid any action that could be twisted against me. This was a situation that could easily turn ugly, and I was determined to protect myself and my property from further harm. As if on cue, 10 minutes later, the sound of police sirens echoed through the neighborhood, confirming my worst fears. Karen's manipulative charade had worked. She had successfully weaponized her privilege, transforming herself into the victim and me into the aggressor in the eyes of law enforcement. I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that I would need to remain calm and collected to navigate this precarious situation. The officers approached, their demeanor cautious and professional, but their eyes were already fixed on me. Karen, dripping wet and feigning distress, launched into her carefully constructed narrative. She spun a tale of terror, claiming that I had chased her and her friends with a grill fork, painting me as a crazed, violent aggressor. The absurdity of the accusation was almost comical, but I knew that the situation was far from funny. The officers listened intently, their expressions unreadable. The image of me frantically chasing pool invaders with a fork was outrageous. I calmly explained my side of the story, detailing Karen's uninvited intrusion, her refusal to leave, and her subsequent fabrication of events. I emphasized that I had simply asked them to leave my property, and that I had never threatened or assaulted anyone. To strengthen my case, I directed the officers' attention to my security camera feed. I explained that the cameras had captured the entire incident, providing irrefutable proof of Karen's trespassing and her false accusations. The officers reviewed the footage, their expressions shifting as they witnessed the reality of the situation. The video clearly showed Karen and her accomplices hopping my fence, damaging my property in the process, and making themselves at home in my pool without my permission. It also captured their theft of drinks from my outdoor fridge, further exposing their blatant disregard for my property rights. The security footage was damning evidence that completely contradicted Karen's fabricated narrative. As the officers watched the video, the power dynamic shifted. Karen's crocodile tears dried up, and her confident demeanor crumbled as the truth was revealed. One of the officers pulled me aside, his tone suddenly more inquisitive. He asked me if I was the same Terrence Blake who used to work in cybercrimes for the city. I confirmed that I was. A flicker of recognition crossed his face, and he explained that they had an open file for months, investigating a local identity theft ring, targeting homeowners who frequently traveled. Little did I know, this seemingly unrelated detail would unravel the whole truth. The officer's revelation sent a shiver down my spine. I fought cybercrime for over 10 years and thought the work was behind me. I was wrong. He explained that their investigation had hit a wall until now. He leaned in, lowering his voice. He told me that Karen appeared on multiple street camera recordings, purchasing prepaid phones and setting up dummy rental listings. A wave of realization washed over me. Karen's brazen entitlement wasn't just about racism or a desire for a free swim. It was a smokescreen for something far more sinister. My pool party wasn't an isolated incident of bad behavior. It was the culmination of a pattern of criminal activity. As the officer made the revelation, a second police unit arrived on the scene, their presence signaling a shift from a simple trespassing complaint to a full-blown criminal investigation. The officers approached Karen and her accomplices, their tone now firm and authoritative, and questioned her for 10 minutes before placing both Karen and one of her friends under arrest. I later learned the extent of Karen's criminal enterprise. She had been forging documents, creating fake leases, and using stolen identities to fraudulently claim ownership of multiple homes in the neighborhood. She was running a sophisticated scam, preying on unsuspecting homeowners and exploiting loopholes in the system. The police had been trying to pinpoint her location for months, and it was my backyard pool party that inadvertently led to her downfall. Her arrogance and entitlement had blinded her to the potential consequences of her actions, ultimately leading to her capture. The irony was not lost on me. Her racism and her fence-hopping were foolish and predictable, but her attempt to scam the neighborhood and her accidental exposure by someone with law enforcement connections sealed her fate. As Karen was led away in handcuffs, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. Her reign of terror in the neighborhood was finally over, and the peace of my backyard was finally restored. The whole ordeal served as a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that true justice often comes in unexpected ways when you least expect it.